Welcome, everyone. We do have all of us present with Colin and John joining us remotely. We are on the third floor here, so in order to get out of the building in an emergency, you can go back through the offices or out to the steps. If you can't go down the steps, there is a location at the top of the elevator where the emergency personnel will come find you. Refuge. Any agenda changes? Okay, open to the public for items not related to the agenda. If you have any online, you can unmute. Okay, seeing none. Announcements and staff report. I guess my one announcement is that Paul and I, and Michael was in attendance as well last night at the city council meeting, did a presentation to summarize the land development regulations and official map changes that we've passed on to the city council. The councilors had a robust discussion amongst themselves, and have decided to hold off on warning a public hearing until their next meeting. They had some questions about kind of the workings of the official map, seemed like one of their biggest questions. And they felt like they wanted to, specifically they were interested in having a further discussion about whether or not to put on a city center park, since we are doing a lot of city center specific changes. And wanted to be able to get some more information about whether or not that would be an acceptable change in their best interest.
It's the official map of the city center only.
Yes, of the city
Because
center.
there's a huge amount of confusion everywhere.
Yeah. And I was specific to tell them that we were only looking at the zoom of the city center area official map. So, and then they had a few other comments amongst themselves where, I mean, they may or may not choose to make changes. They didn't vote on any kind of changes yet. And they thanked us for the great work of us and staff to get the large amount of work to them. It seemed like a pretty positive overall discussion with only a very few discussion points. There was some discussion about exactly what the right height is. Seemed like one of the big ones. And the official map.
Like in terms of the 14 stories.
Yeah, there was some discussion, some counselors were maybe not quite comfortable with that
Also,
number.
14 stories was an issue.
And then there was some discussion of the Doubletree area land use change to T4. They generally seemed supportive of our approach to the bedrock, of doing some continued discussion. So I think ultimately we didn't get any specific feedback. That's just a general summary of some of the discussion points that came up as they were discussing amongst themselves. So we may or may not get some direction from them after their next discussion, or maybe something will come out of their hearing process.
As of last night, they had no asks of the planning commission.
Yes.
Just in process of some discussion.
Yeah, and Michael clarified that with a specific question. Do you want us to do anything? And they said no. So there's no.
I mean, lots of things,
Specific.
but nothing on that set of LDR amendments.
They were looking for a legal opinion on the question of the modifications they want to the city center official map. I don't know whether they got it yet, but.
Yeah, which is not a question for us. So, so that's my announcement. Any other announcements?
Nice weather.
Yes, I know.
Especially today.
To meet out there. Any staff report items?
I think so tonight. Lots going on, but we'll put it in your next report.
Okay, we'll keep moving. Then number 5, which is Paul.
All right, it's the 3 minutes of the year that I run the meeting. So this is your reorganizational meeting for new members. This is when you all choose who are your chair, your vice chair, and your clerk, and then setting your regular meeting dates and times. There can be special meetings or modifications, but that's the general schedule. So I would start by asking if anybody has a nomination for chair. If there's, I'll give a chance for there to be more than one. If there's only one, then we'll move forward. If there's more than one, then I'll host a discussion and we can choose if there's a voting on any of that. So
I'll
Michael?
nominate Jessica for chair.
I think you have to throw it last time.
Jessica Luisos.
You have to pronounce it.
Luisos Jessica for chair.
all right.
Okay.
I would have seconded it, but you beat me to it.
Are there any other nominations for chair? Going once, going twice?
Good.
I'm gonna say, Jessica, would you accept being chair?
I would accept being
All
chair.
right. All right, so all those in favor of Jessica Luisos as chair for the next, for the upcoming year, please say aye.
Aye.
You're up there.
I will make this not unanimous.
Oh, sure.
All right, that was unanimous. So I will let you, Jessica, run the remainder of it.
Okay. Nice job, Paul. Nice job. Do we have any nominations for vice chair?
Yes,
Michael? go ahead.
Duncan.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Duncan, would you accept the nomination?
I will indeed.
Okay.
For your help at every meeting.
No more accidents, yes.
Hopefully not have any more
Skiing
broken
in the trees.
limbs. Broken, this one was ice, actually. So, okay, all in favor of Duncan as chair?
Nice
Vice chair.
Vice
try. Nice try.
Well, Karen, you're out.
Chair in my absence. Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, so do we have any nominations for our clerk?
Could somebody say, what does the clerk actually do in this case? Cause
Sure,
somebody-
so the
minutes
clerk
are
is
really-
technically responsible for the minutes. We don't actually sign them, but responsible for them. The clerk is also responsible for, in the absence of the chair and the vice chair, the clerk selects who leads the meeting. And I think technically, officially, the clerk at times receives things on behalf of the commission, but really that comes to our mailbox anyway. So it's a fairly light responsibility, but it is an officer.
When you say the clerk is responsible for the minutes, what did you mean by that?
So historically, when we had paper ones, the clerk signed the minutes. We do a digital signature now, and so we just take care of it after the vote. But I guess technically speaking, the clerk is responsible for making sure that minutes are getting into the land records. We're doing that on your behalf. So
the clerk-
really, it is selecting who runs the meeting in the absence of the chair or the vice chair.
And the clerk can always pick themselves.
Yeah.
Or pick someone else, depending on what they wanna do.
Okay.
Okay. Do we have any nominations and or self-selections, self-nominations for the clerk?
I would do it. yeah.
Oh, I'll nominate Donna.
You're looking for somebody to do it.
Believe it,
Do it.
she would be terrific.
Done.
Helen ran
I'll
through the door like a
second
5-year-old
that.
Christmas.
Do we have any other nominations for the clerk? Okay, all in favor of Donna as clerk?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous. So we did the first A action. So B, our second action is to set the regular meeting dates and times. I make the motion that our regular meeting dates be the second and fourth Tuesdays of the month at 7 p.m. With the exception that there's no second meeting in December, and to modify the schedule to the next available day where the meeting falls on a holiday or where a holiday on a regular city council day pushes their meeting to the date of a regular commission meeting, which we know is at least September 24th, November 12th
This year.
Second.
of this year. Okay, any discussion on the meeting times? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Right,
Who moved? Yeah, Michael.
I did it, yeah.
Michael second.
Okay, number 6, which is our Parks and Open Space Master Plan, presented by CRO.
So just as a brief intro before we get into your presentation, just wanted to orient you all a little bit. You've wrapped up a big set of changes to the land development regulations. As part of your work in the city plan a year and a half ago, there were a number of major planning studies that you advocated for, got a lot of feedback from the committees on, and are now in process. And these are really, you know, as we become a larger community, the city plan isn't the sort of in-depth plan across all topic areas. So we have a climate action plan, we've done an active transportation plan, and now we're doing two that you're gonna get presentations on tonight, or three technically, our open space master plan and our parks master plan, which are being done simultaneously, and an economic development strategic plan. And we're really excited that we're doing these as the next evolution of planning for our community. And the commission's role is a really important one here, because you as a body in both of these subjects and any other ones that you're gonna be getting over the next year and coming years, you're the aside from the council, who are the elected officials for the city, you are the body whose role it is looking through the lens of land use and conservation and development about stitching all of it together. We have lots of committees that are really dedicated to subject areas and incredibly thoughtful members of our community who serve on these committees, who participate. Your unique role is that you're the ones who are stitching this work together and thinking about how do we balance these different needs. And so you're getting a presentation tonight. It's largely an orientation. There's not actions tonight, though your feedback is very welcome. Part of this also is to set you up for future feedback on these efforts over the as they work over the coming months, and then and making sure that we are balancing those things well. And then following it, there's going to be a lot of implementation work, some of which will be on your plate, either from planning perspective or regulatory perspective, and capital planning and all that kind of stuff. So just wanted to orient you to that big picture. Is anything else that you wanted to add, maybe to introduce our two guests, Kelsey?
No, just introducing our guest from CRO. CRO has been working on this project for 6 months or so at this point, intensely. Started with some sort of framing process with a staff team and primarily with the Rec and Parks Committee and the Natural Resources Committees. They've been involved fairly regularly in the process. There's also a community advisory committee that involves both staff, the staff team and members from some of those committees, but then also from the housing committee and other interested members of the public who, you know, do work through the schools or other organizations. So that has met about monthly for about the last 6 months. And this is a progress report and sort of orientation. Like, you all know that this is something that has been happening, but really haven't gotten the sort of in-depth explanation, presentation until this point. They are sort of in the analysis stage of things, sort of between a lot of public outreach and feedback from a lot of different directions, and then moving into the analysis and then recommendations, report writing in the next few months. So we have Drew and we have Carolyn from CRO.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. It's also, okay, I love that y'all have name tags that the other committees don't, so thanks. It's nice to meet all of you. As Kelsey said, we've been doing this for a couple months now, and the presentation we put together tonight is a pretty high level overview of the process that we've been implementing throughout the course of this project. And then I also kind of curated some slides that felt more pertinent to this commission. But if you guys have any questions throughout the course of this presentation, please don't hesitate to ask. I'm going to turn it over to Drew to lead most of this meeting, but I'm excited to be here and appreciate your dedication to this.
I'll just mention we were in the same room last night with our advisory committee, and Kelsey, I think you're on your at least several meetings to that point last night. And Carolyn has been driving all of these presentations and the project. Also had a concussion a few weeks ago. And so you did present for 2 hours yesterday. Amazingly, you crushed it. But today I'm going to present and let her chime in a little bit more, but I just want to give recognition that I'll be presenting mostly Carolyn's work here, and our rest of our team. And that, Kelsey, thank you for being with us again tonight. But just as both Paul and Kelsey mentioned, we are working on these plans. And there is a lot more detail. We're gonna try and give an overview of everything that we're looking at. But we can, if there's anything you guys want to dig deeper onto, we can share some of those materials we've been sharing with the advisory group as well. And you all can go from there and dig in more. And feel free to ask questions as we go.
Would you be, thank you.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's just a slight delay between here and there, but I've got it. Just let me know when you want to change a slide.
So we wanted to kind of just first center ourselves around a project overview. What is the project about? What is the timeline and where are we at? What are the deliverables in these two plans? Touch on the public engagement that's been done to date. We've been working through public visioning, through some surveys, meetings, and some things here at City Hall and at Parks and Rec events. And then talk a little bit about where we're headed into recommendations and implementation. So this is, again, just giving credit where credit is due. Silken came up with a lot of this text kind of originally for their RFP. But this has been wordsmithed just a little bit with our two committees and the advisory committee, but really encapsulates what these two plans are about. Looking at recognizing that the Parks Master Plan and Open Space Master Plan have a lot of relationships. There's a lot of interplay between those two types of lands in terms of use and in terms of the land use and human use. But that there are perhaps different goals. And so there are two planning efforts that are related, but also kind of can have their own life. But the goal is to holistically assess those parklands, recreation amenities, and open spaces through this comprehensive process that expands access, equity, sustainability, human and habitat connectivity, and environmental quality. So there's a lot in there. Almost, I wouldn't say kitchen sink, because you could put agriculture and maybe a few other things, but there's a lot of stuff in this plan, which is great.
Yeah, this has kind of been like our guiding statement through the process, so like highest level.
And as you mentioned, we're, really about 6 months in earnest, especially kicking off in earnest in January. We did some public visioning earlier on. I think our public meeting was it in March. Carolyn, you might remember.
April 7th.
April, thank you. Yep. And we've had a survey going since then. We've been working through the existing conditions and capacity and needs analysis. And we're kind of reaching the end of that. Yesterday, we presented kind of our second round of existing conditions analysis to our advisory committee. So we're just nearing the end of that. And we're starting to look at recommendations, both at a citywide level for parks and for open spaces, but also on a park by park basis. We're gonna start looking at, we would call them, you can think of them as master plan light, but we're thinking of them as bubble diagrams for each park. What amenities might you look at in the future? What are the rough costs? We're not quite designing these things at a master plan level, but it's kind of starting to look at spatially each park and what might go there. Importantly, there are two different plans, and we're working really closely with the Recreation and Parks Committee and the Natural Resources and Conservation Committee. And on our advisory group, there are some members of each of them. But we are also meeting with both of those committees on their own. And both of them are looking at both plans, but Parks and Rec is focusing a little bit more on the Parks and Rec plan, and the open space plan is a little bit more in the wheelhouse of the Natural Resources and Conservation Commission. So they're all seeing all of the same maps and information. We're just diving in deeper with the natural resources folks on open space and vice versa with Rec and Park.
Yeah, and some feedback we got at the beginning of this process with that there has been like some tension between those two committees in the past, and that's something we've been trying to remain really cognizant of throughout this process. And the hope, was that like another outcome of this process was that like there will be more communication between those two communities, even though they're getting their own master plans, their individual master plans, yeah.
And I think importantly, kind of building off the city plan, kind of establish some definitions. We're really working with both groups to establish some shared definitions of language within the city. And I think this could become a place where it'd be really helpful if you all review that and feel good about that too. We'd love for city plan to also wrap that same language and all of the planning documents around parks, open spaces, active recreation, passive recreation. And what was the one in the middle that we added now? Oh, I guess we put passive recreation in the middle of active, passive, and conservation.
Yeah, we'll be talking more about those definitions later tonight.
What's in red?
Oh, so these are just the tasks that we're doing now, that Drew already said. Sorry, those slides were randomly out of order, but yeah, this is what we're doing now.
Yep, we are finishing up task 3 and we are diving into task 4. So there is a project website through an ArcGIS story map, and that links out from the city website. We've had lots of city staff meetings, various one-on-one meetings with Adam to go through budgets and with GIS people and with Kelsey, and I think lots of different members of the staff has been incredibly helpful. We've had about 6 advisory group meetings. We've attended several individual committee meetings, mostly with Rec and Park and Natural Resources. I think you all are our first committee meeting outside of those two. I think there was a mention of maybe meeting with Bike Ped or if there are other committees, but it felt like the 3 of y'all are kind of the 3 most important that we identified. But we could meet with others as needed. We had that public visioning open house in April, and we had about 400 responses to our online public survey that dives into both open space and recreation.
Was it visioning the dot,
Yep,
that story?
We did sticker dots, there was write-in answers, we had some one-on-one conversations. There's also, we called it meeting in a box. And so these were a smaller version of those sticker dot boards and write-in exercises. There were some here at the library and at City Hall. And there was another batch that went around with Adam with Parks and Rec to as many events as he could take them to. So he took them to things like the Paint and Sip and the South Burlington Night Out and as many different events. They're trying to meet people where they are. Another engagement piece, and maybe you all have some insights on this, just knowing that planning does a lot of engagement as well, as we're been working with AALV and trying to engage some of the new American community. And we had some progress. They've been super busy, and we haven't been able to kind of follow up with them. We've stopped in. We've been there several times, and so we're potentially looking at other strategies towards some focus groups and some kind of community champion conversations with the new American community. Especially looking at some of our public visioning results, we want to make sure that we're hearing from everybody within the community, and we didn't see as many folks that didn't have English as a first language or spatially. We wanted to make sure we're reaching out to everybody, so we saw kind of a response.
Before you go further, just to connect dots for commissioners, this is really the first project that we're doing that is implementing the equity and outreach project that you all initiated 1.5 years ago. And so these meeting in a box idea and having Adam, our recreation director, intentionally go out to all the different programming, seeking out those who aren't historically attending meetings to get those perspectives is very much rooted in the equity and outreach project. And so just connecting those dots that this is the first project really going through that from the very beginning.
We were really excited to see that tool. It was amazing. Yeah, and we got that from Silken, and we developed the public engagement plan based on that. So, yeah, thank you. That's really important.
And then one more connecting of the dots for those names. Silken is our project implementer, project person over in Public Works. Project manager over in Public Works, and Adam is our recreation director. They've been the co-leads on this project with Kelsey as our point person in planning and zoning. So just to, as our city has grown in people, we don't necessarily know all the people every day from
Sorry
so
about
just
that.
connecting it together.
Yep. And I would say Kelsey's been very involved as well, so you've given us a lot of time, as well, so very much appreciate that.
Yeah, so we had like 457 online survey responses, which was great to see. We had over 120 people attend the April 7th open house, which was
Slow
also,
down.
oh, sorry, which was also great. And then the meeting in the box boards, we had to print 4 different batches of those posters because we had like hundreds and hundreds of sticker dot like votes. So it was really cool to see like those different facets of public engagement, and we feel like it captured a lot more people than it might not have. So this like focus or potential focus group engagement with the new American communities is kind of like our last step for this like initial visioning phase. And then what's next up is going to be like a draft opportunities open house. So it'll be really similar to the April meeting that we had, but at this meeting, we'll be presenting like our draft recommendations for both of the plans. And the hope is that we will be able to meet with you guys again before that meeting to kind of like get your thoughts on the draft recommendations before we bring them to the public.
Good. So
Slide was funny, the relevant. It's all right. I was like, what do they want to know about?
we are planners, and so we really value plans being carried forward into other plans. And so we worked really hard, and South Burlington has a lot of planning documents. And so we worked really hard to look at them. And we actually tracked back through several city plans to see kind of what was the evolution of how parks were defined, for example. And some of those things were really relevant. We tried to track back through several planning documents, or several iterations. But we did, and maybe this is valuable to the planning commission, we do have a pretty robust summary document of the 57 plans that we analyzed. It's primarily focused on parks and open spaces, but that does come up with conservation and land use in some regards as well. And so that's certainly a kind of an appendix or a kind of standalone document you all use. But it's really important for us to make sure that we're pulling out those themes and trying to build upon the previous planning that's been done. And we found that the recent city plan had a lot of kind of guidance leading into these two Parks and Rec and open space master plans. I know you know this really well. Do you want to talk?
Yeah, sorry. These are just the themes that came out of that like big old plan audit. My best friend ChatGPT helped me create this graphic because I'm not a designer. But we thought that this was really telling and also really like in line with what we've been like in like the community conversations that we've been having. Like folks like are really excited about like additional trails and connectivity throughout the city. There's also like a lot of interest in like increasing the accessibility for like maybe folks that have a physical disability, but also to make the spaces more welcoming for new Americans and all that fun stuff. Also big focus on environmental, sustainable and green infrastructure, as well as habitat conservation, ecological connectivity. I've been really impressed by like previous like plans and studies that have happened throughout the last decade specifically regarding that stuff and how it intersects with recreation. Yeah, and then just like working with the community to ensure that there's buy-in across the board. Yeah, just being really smart. And this is where like the planning and zoning comes into, like how can we be smart about the growth that the city is seeing? And how can we be good and intelligent about how the land is being developed or not?
I think that's been a big theme of our advisory committee, is thinking about the future of South Burlington. They want to make sure that we're planning for South Burlington in 20 years from now and what city center might look like then. You know, we are doing analysis of what there is today, but we want to think about the future recommendations, thinking about not tomorrow, but what South Burlington wants to be into the future.
Yeah. So Kelsey and I had a great conversation. Sorry, here I am.
Please.
Steamrolling.
You're feeling good. Go for it. Please do.
We had a good conversation about like the city plan and like what was intentionally included and what was intentionally not included. And something that came out of that was like the 2011 city plan had very concrete definitions about like types of parks and types of recreation. And the 2024 city plan did not. And the hope was that like this parks master plan and open space master plan could work to fill those holes based on like definitions that feel more relevant to this department. So
just to loop back on that, like when we were doing the city plan, remember we talked about it being the plan for more plans, that it was sort of the umbrella structure with the intention that a lot of the details in different topic areas, like economic development or parks and open space or whatever would come with further planning processes like this. So that's between the 2011 and the 16 plans and the 2024 plan. That shifted from being, let's throw everything into the city, into the municipal plan, into we're gonna set up the structure at a high level, and then during the 8 years the plan's in place, fill in additional details with more in-depth planning processes with the professionals in those areas. So this is the first that you're seeing of that sort of things came out of the city plan, not to omit them from the city plan, but to leave that sort of specific expertise to additional planning processes like this.
Thank you, that was really succinct and eloquent.
I've said it a few times to various people.
So we workshopped these definitions, like Drew mentioned before, with the advisory group and some of the city staff, and because there's been like a lot of confusion, like both like with folks on the advisory group committee, but also apparently from the public about like what is active and passive. And so we kind of try to like structure these definitions around like infrastructure required for this type of recreation that you're doing. So like active recreation is like you need a soccer goal or a football post. Goal post, whereas passive recreation is more like y'all just need a trail and like a pair of sneakers. So yeah, just like different equipment requirements there. And conservation preservation areas like even less, like maybe recreation isn't even allowed there, maybe it's just there to protect wildlife and ecosystems there. So we were hoping this like spectrum would kind of help align people with like where we're going with this and having some more like park examples to again help people like think about what we're talking about.
Are there some sort of hybrids of that? Because I'm thinking Center City Park, it doesn't really have, I mean, it's a passive recreation area, but it does have a few things for kids to play on, things like that. It also does have construction because you need boardwalks to basically access that.
That's like where the spectrum I'm hoping will like fill in. So like maybe city center fits somewhere in between the passive and active recreation and like the blue-green part of the arrow.
And just because it keeps going through my head, because it's the whole Farrell property and the waterfront area down there, a lot of it's wetland, but it's like, hey, that can be nice park, you know, if you treat it the right way and stuff like
I
that.
don't know, maybe they'll even get into this, but it seems like some bigger areas might actually be all three, like across like a big property like that you're talking about, and I don't.
You're right,
See
yeah.
how you might parse that out when you look at an individual spot.
Yeah, there could be a place that has a conservation area, passive recreation area, and an active recreation area all in the same parcel if it was large enough.
What's the Ewing property?
A city-owned property that the open space fund was used to help conserve, but it does not allow for public access. It's like primarily used for preservation of
Right.
habitat.
You don't
One
think-
one clarification, it's not city owned.
Sorry.
The city participated in
In
its
the
permanent
conservation.
conservation. It's below the Eau Claire properties, right on the Shelburne. Most of it's in Shelburne.
So I've had so many conversations with Kelsey about that stuff. too.
Which properties, where the money went for
Just
what.
so you know, the Hubbard Recreation is also Hubbard Recreation and Nature,
Sorry, I will.
and Natural, sorry, area.
Quick question, you guys said you did a public survey when it was out there. Was this language used in the survey? In other words, active recreation, passive conservation?
We did use active and passive. We did not have the spectrum developed for the survey yet. And I think really the first phase of the survey, we are sharing language and sharing ideas, but we're mostly trying to listen. And I think in our next round, we will want to present this to folks at kind of our draft recommendation stage where we're doing a little bit more presenting and getting feedback. So the first one, we were trying to not get too many concepts and really just do a lot of kind of taking in. And I think in addition to this, we are looking at defining more definitions around parks, neighborhood parks.
That's the next slide, actually.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
But there are lots of kind of ways to categorize that we're trying to think about.
One note from my perspective is, you know, if you're getting feedback that the two left ones might be a little bit tightly defined to one another. In that, for example, there are walking trails both through Wheeler Nature Park and the Muddy Brook Wetland Reserve.
Okay.
Just my own personal feedback is that maybe passive pulls a little bit more into other activities that might happen in it, because there's a lot between a walking trail and a soccer field
Yeah.
that we may or may not actually have in our own community, but that wouldn't necessarily be considered, Vet Memorial Park. Even a place like, setting aside the beach, the trails at Red Rocks are substantive, they're 12 feet wide, they're built up.
Yeah.
That's different from, the 3 feet at Wheeler and Muddy Brook, and so you might want to have the middle be a little bit more in the middle, I guess.
Yeah, that
It
makes
feels
sense.
like those two are very close to one another, and then the other's really far.
Thank you,
to the
that's
other
really
end.
helpful feedback. I'm also wondering if like maybe we should include some examples like on the in-between spaces too, to bring additional clarity to what you're saying, yeah.
I mean, there might we talked about walking, things that don't necessarily exist in our community, but like winter cross-country groomed trail. That's a little bit more active than some other parks, but is not developed. In other communities, I'm not advocating for these things necessarily in our community, but there could be a pump track in a community or a disc golf course in a community. I understand that there's one at the high school now. That kind of thing that is somewhere in between.
Yeah, a little bit of infrastructure, mostly doesn't take up a lot like a ball field or a basketball court. Yep, absolutely. And I think that is our hope with the spectrum, and so building that out a little bit more is to show a little bit more of what's in between those three, I think would be really valuable. And maybe is there a comment?
Yeah, sorry, I thought I saw a question come up in the chat.
Yeah, we don't tend to
Yeah.
monitor the chat in
Oh,
these meetings, no, it's.
We didn't announce that when this person arrived though, so just so you know, we don't monitor the chat, so if there'll be a point at the end of the presentation where the chair invites comment from members of the public, but we do have it written down here for this one.
No, go right ahead. Parks.
So as you mentioned, we are looking at defining some of the park types here as well, and giving some examples. In here, trying to combine the two of these, you might see some of the other spectrums applied to any one of these park types. And so open space and natural area might most likely won't have a lot of active, but you could see either of the other two, for example. And the idea there is like between pocket park, mini park, and neighborhood park, those are much more serving the local community that surrounds the park. And as you move towards community park and regional park, they're more destination oriented. You'd come from all over the city or maybe even around Chittenden to visit that sort of
Yeah,
park.
and a small edit to this table, if it matters, is that we actually decided last night to bump veterans to a regional park, considering the addition of the turf field, that feels like more of a regional destination, so we'll come up with a new example for a community park for the purposes of the next presentation.
One additional feedback from when some of this was in the city plan is consider also that sometimes a small park may be an intensive park.
Yes, and Adam has
So
said that a lot.
overlook, it's described as a mini park, but it is almost a regional park. It's just very small. And as we think about in the future in city center, we may have a very small park that is a major destination. So just consider,
Goose
how those things,
Goose Park.
right, how those things might, and it may not be entirely correlated to size.
Yeah, it does feel like maybe city center is a community park
Mhm.
and an overlook maybe actually moves into that space as well. Or even regional, can be small, but regional. Yeah.
Right, whereas like Baycrest would be a mini park and well, it might be neighborhood, but it might be mini. I mean, there's just one little tiny play structure in there, so.
So I think the point is that it's not necessarily based on size, but maybe intensity and draw.
And
mean-
also sort of something that's been talked about in the advisory group is the uniqueness of an amenity. So something like the ice arena up at Veterans and the band shell and stuff like that's something that's not in other parks. If, for example, there was a skate park in a very small parcel, but there were no other skate parks, that's a different thing than the same size parcel having a playground that's repeated elsewhere in the city. So, because people aren't gonna drive all the way across town to go to a playground that's the same as the one 2 blocks from their house. But they may drive all the way across town to a skate park that's a similar size, a similar like appearance of development, but it's not repeated elsewhere.
And then I'm imagining that you would then use this information, you know, as some of this is capturing what we have today, but this is really about planning for the future, so that if we're gonna have our first ever skate park, think about what role that will then become for the community. So maybe if we're gonna have our first ever skate park, it maybe wouldn't go into a place that you don't wanna bring a lot of visitors. Right, like you might not wanna, I'm gonna pick on Baycrest again, you may not wanna have that be a regional draw for a skate park just because there happens to be a little bit of space there. Because that's thinking about what the role of the park it becomes in the future.
I'm not sure if you have it in the presentation, you have the heat maps.
Ooh, I did not include the heat maps.
We'll just mention that it is also based in the city plan, I think, that there's a park and or an open space within every quarter mile, or is it eighth mile?
It's quarter.
Quarter mile. And so we did a heat map analysis with the population density and the location, and we have several different maps. One of them is just parks, one of them is open spaces, one of them has those two combined. And we did the radius for the quarter mile is based on entrances to the parks. Some of them, like Veterans, has several entrances, and so there's several circles that encompass that quarter mile. Another thing we heard that was important from the advisory group was that looked at playgrounds, for example, are shown. So, because that's something you want to make sure that there's reasonable access to playgrounds throughout the city. And so within that, we show what amenities are available at each park. So you can, looking at that map, you kind of get a sense of the spatial distribution of those amenities that we want to make sure are
I'll give you a
spread.
picture of that map.
So I'm unclear when you say a heat map.
I just emailed Kelsey a picture of the map, so hopefully she can pull it up on the screen. We can look at it together. Sorry. I
Thought
didn't
you were
include this.
relating that to the intense heat and
It is.
there'd be a place to cool off.
It is not a heat map in terms of temperature, but it shows it's more red where population is dense. It's a population density
okay.
map.
It's that kind of.
Infrared.
All right,
No, it's based on census data, but just presented.
okay, that's more clear, thank you.
May I ask a question? Do you consider school district open space and playgrounds in your data at all? Okay.
Yep, in the inventory, we could share these maps with y'all, but there are city-owned and non-city owned. I think it's pretty deep because there's lots of different owners of open space, and so, and also recreation facilities are a lot privately owned, but the recreation department partners with them, and so we're trying to list, but city-owned and non-city owned. There are also parks by like the Winooski Valley Parks District, which are publicly owned, publicly accessible, but not owned by the city, so we're trying to represent kind of all of those. But importantly,
Sorry, the
all of the
colors.
playgrounds are mapped in terms of the schools and that equity kind of spatial distribution map, that was really important.
Yeah, so you'll see like the schools are like purple on this map and there's like multiple circles for each park because we wanted to show like the quarter mile radius for each entrance, because we thought that would be a helpful stat.
We made several of these. This one is, I would mention, the busiest one, but it gives us the most information in one. But we also made some that kind of peel back so we could look at one topic at a time. But this one has the open space and the parks.
Is
I think-
yellow the most dense
Yeah.
then? Oh, okay.
I think this really illustrates the need. And, you know, I mean, we've been talking about having you all, somebody make this plan for, I don't know, feels like decades. Like Paul's whole time, probably. So, I mean,
Decades.
yeah, decades. So, I mean, and you can see, like, those circles don't overlap with all of the areas where the people are living, so this is awesome.
I think especially this one is looking at open space and parks. Once you look at the two individually, there's even more areas that are underserved, and so that's pretty helpful.
Can you play with the levels? Can you remove things to see other parts of the map without?
We have individual maps, like it's not, unfortunately not interactive at this time,
Okay.
but yeah.
What does each circle represent?
The quarter mile radius for an entry point to the park or open space. Cause that was also a goal identified in the city plan, was
Mhm.
having
Right.
access to a park or open space within a quarter mile.
To what extent, do you mind that I'm asking? this
Go
question?
right ahead,
Um,
please.
to what extent, have you been able to incorporate any of, where we're envisioning future, neighborhoods and or intensity of development to exist to this, so that we're planning for today's residents, but also as Shelburne Road builds out further for more housing or other areas of the city.
Yeah,
Um,
Kelsey, if you wouldn't mind going back to the slide presentation, we have, Kelsey showed us like, the imminently owned or imminently to be city owned, like, open spaces. So we did factor that into,
I meant it from the inverse though, from where the neighborhoods are gonna be.
We have not done that
Okay.
yet, but that would be a pretty easy, we kind of replace the heat map underneath, but everything else stays the same, if you will.
Connect on that. We have some information that we've used for some transit planning work that we've done that we'd love to share with you. And also the future land use map is a pretty good indicator long-term of where we're looking to do. But yeah.
And that's, the future land use map is in the city plan. So you've seen that one, but we have the transit data.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, if you have something where you've already kind of crosswalked the future land use to population density, we'll grab that, but if not, we could do that as well.
So just the map with all the circles and circles, how do you factor in like bike trails or bike paths?
so we have another separate map that has the trails and connectivity on it. We have oh my gosh, like maybe 11 maps at this point, and I can send all of those to Kelsey to distribute to y'all if that would be helpful. We have like a tree cover map that shows like shade, like,
We
Summer, that's important.
we were not feeling like access to the bike path though met that quarter mile goal of
Well,
access to
that would
park
be
or
weird
open
because
space.
the bike trails are miles, so.
Yeah. You could do it and you kind of give yourself a lot of maybe more credit in doing so, but you'd be doing way better than most communities in America that don't even have access to that bike path network or a place to walk that has some greenery around it. If it,
We have one of our commissioners has a comment. Colin, you wanna go ahead?
Just one thing, this might be splitting hairs too much, but I was wondering if we would consider for the heat map, of course, we're only considering parcels in the city of South Burlington, but I can think particularly along the border with Burlington, there are areas where a lot of residents who live like across the street from South Burlington might actually be their closest park is within South Burlington. And I'd be wondering if it might make sense to include those census tracts as well, at least within the heat map. I mean, I get our responsibilities to serve populations. We make it a little differently if it's not within our town border, but I think there are places that a lot of community members who are using our parks or walking to our parks might be just over a town line. And I was just wondering if it might make sense to include those tracks within the heat map, so for visualization purposes, only if it's not, too much of an extra huge amount of work, but yeah.
It could work the opposite way too. I'm thinking of, some of the parks. Can't remember what it's called now. We used to call it South Park. I remember that. Callahan in Burlington. That is probably a quarter of a mile. Maybe it's a little bit further.
Well,
From-
Oakledge is a good example of a
Schmanska.
park that a lot of South Burlington people use that's in Burlington. And
Right.
Red Rocks, really, I mean, there's a lot of people drive there from outside of.
Right, I think
Burlington.
drive versus being your catchment though, I think that
Yeah.
the regional park is always gonna be a drive, but your example of
Yeah,
like
the one,
Schmanska
so
is.
the one that I go to is technically in Burlington, it's Schmanska, cause I live on the extreme, like
Oh,
past
right,
the
that's a-
airport, so we walk to Schmanska, which is in Burlington. So I don't know if that like lets us off the hook for making a park near me, or if, like, do we, like, is that a good thing or a bad thing to include? Do we really wanna make sure we are providing for our residents?
It cuts
Or
both
is it
ways though,
okay?
right? I mean, the people who live in the Red Rocks neighborhood in Burlington have Red Rocks Park literally in their backyard, right? And so,
It's a regional park in a way.
right, but for them, it's also their neighborhood park. They're literally right
Yeah.
next to it.
And it's available to them.
Right.
So
And, like,
interesting.
I was also I lived on Grove Street in Apple Grove, so I was the first one in Burlington, and I used J.C. Park. We use Schmanska, I use J.C. Park just as much. If you live in that corridor.
I guess a question I have for y'all is like, what would be like an appropriate radius to include outside the city limits? Like, is it a mile? Is it a half mile? Like, how much data are you looking to see for outside the city?
I think it would, I mean, just from my perspective, it feels like if it's within a quarter mile, like, I think we wanna focus on our goal of a quarter mile, and if it's further away, it shouldn't count, because you'd have to drive there. That's
Yeah.
what I was thinking when Con brought that up, like, if I can walk a quarter mile from my house to that park, it feels like it would meet our goal.
Well,
I-
the definition of park too, you know, it's like, cause that map, you know, all those circles, and I'm thinking, there's a lot of natural areas in those areas where, that you're not including. And I think there's kind of an age difference about how people view parks versus, you know, passive and active. Kids, you know, people with kids tend to want the more active parks, or if they play, you know, baseball or something like that. Versus a lot more people who jog, bicycle, you know, consider the bike paths to be their park. And, you know, and you do see a lot of use of the bike paths or recreation paths of people who don't tend to frequent the active parks very much. So, you know, it's just, yeah, it's a complicated thing that you're doing, because there are so many different ways that people use different kinds of property. And so this whole thing of the quarter mile, yeah, that kind of works for families. But, you know, it's like, I know people who say they walk, you know, they walk like 5-10 miles a day sometime. And so they're all over the city in one day, or running and stuff. They tend to really use that connectivity.
So
Not so
maybe-
much the parks themselves, but they really use the paths.
I'm wondering if something that would be helpful is like for the map that I have not shown y'all yet that has the rec path and trails, like I wonder if it would make sense to add like one of those quarter mile circles to like the very obvious entry points to the rec path and the trails. Do you think that would serve? what you're talking about?
That would work, cause then if you only have to run or
there's-
walk a quarter of a mile to get on a really good running path,
There are so
that's
many
your
entry
recreation.
points.
There are a lot of entry points, because, you know, a lot of the rec path, I mean, it goes right past houses.
Yeah.
So every single house has access to it pretty
Right.
directly.
I think, let us take a crack at the population density map with the connectivity, and we'll look at if we need access circles or not. Let's take a look at overlaying the network over the population
That
density.
would be cool,
Yeah,
just
see
see the
what that
networks
looks
of
like.
trails.
And I wonder if that's like a focus for the bike ped committee. I know you said you were thinking about meeting with them, and I think, you know, and Donna has worked with them
I'm
for
still
many
on it,
years. Oh, you're
actually.
still on it? Oh
I'm
my
still
God.
on it.
Donna's still on it. But like that could be a
City
really
council
cool
surprised me.
to get feedback for that specific connectivity piece.
And we are picking up kind of some of their active transportation network recommendations, particularly where they're talking about the bike path as well. And so, yeah, I think that would really make sense to make sure we're kind of aligning with all of the things that they're thinking around that.
Cool. Sorry, we derailed you.
No, that's
No, this is
exactly
so
what we're-
helpful.
that would be nice.
Yeah.
I think, I'm sorry, just to go back to the areas outside of the city, sounds like we want to look at things that are quarter mile, maybe just outside the
Yep.
city.
I would agree with that, because I think Colin has a good point. If it's walkable, it's gonna get a lot of traffic. I think if you get beyond a quarter mile, it's gonna enough to make it worth including.
And
I
I'm a
guess
fan of more maps, so we'll just make it as a separate map, actually. They'll have one that's just the city. If we want to look at it, city boundaries, that might be important to folks, and then we'll look at one that has the regional on it as well.
Another slight thing to I guess consider is whether or not again, this is one of those, if it's not too much of an effort, is looking at like the actual walking distance versus the radius. Like in particular, one thing that comes to mind is again, I guess is like I guess we have like freeways and stuff in our community, and like certain or extremes or like private land where some of those areas where it's a quarter mile, but in practice it's closer to say a mile, could potentially cause some again, this is one of those as only as long as it's not too much of an effort. I'm like for another example, I guess this is just outside of the city limits. Like I'm thinking of there's a large community like north of kind of northeast of Red Rocks, who previously was a pretty quick walk to Red Rock, but with the recently or about to be bleached what's it called? The Champlain Parkway, yeah, the Parkway are now
Yeah,
are now getting cut off. Now the Pine Street's being cut into, and that's an area where it's like in the radius it still looks fine, but in the actual walking distance, it's like, oh, it might be a mile or so or something. So I guess I'd be, if it's not a huge ass, I'm more interested in actual walking distances, at least along roadways, than the radii, but I totally get if that's just gonna muddle everything and make it a little confusing.
I think that would be feasible because we already have like the trails and like bike path information. I mean, sorry, to be completely transparent, GIS is a mystery to me, but like I imagine that it would be relatively easy to like pull in like sidewalk data.
It is like a network analysis. It's a little bit of a different type of analysis. I think presenting the data would be capturing the data easier, showing it on the map, the
Fair.
circles are very
Yeah.
for that, but actually doing the analysis, and then we could highlight which parks have that the circles aren't very accurate, right? So that would tell us, hey, I think it might be JC that has Wilson Road and some other things that are gonna be harder to cross. We'll try to look at those sites specifically and identify the ones that the radius doesn't actually
Yeah.
tell.
I mean, I guess when I hear like in terms of presenting, I guess what I can think to mind to like have some kind of like binary type thing, like color. Here are all roads or sidewalks or whatever kind of constructed, all segments that are within 1/4 of the entrance. You know what I mean? Like color all the things that are within the 1/4 mile, and then have here's all the roads with things for sorties and proxy for addresses that are not a 5 mile, like a 1/4 mile walk to an entrance or something. So it's kind of like, here in red are the ones that aren't, here in green are the ones that are, or something. Just a random idea I had off the top of my head.
Yeah, I see that. Yep,
And,
absolutely.
if that's just way too complicated, because I know you said network analysis of GIS, like, you might be able to reasonably simply like, maybe like chop it along the interstate at least, cut off the part of the circle that's like truly not accessible, like, because there's only a few of those. Because I like, although I mean, I really like what Colin's saying, I could see that maybe that's beyond the, your
And
capability.
in some cases, it might actually be an indication of what's needed for that park, because I keep thinking like Oak Creek Village and how close it is to Veterans Park. But there's only a really mediocre walking trail that's sometimes not too travelable because it gets very muddy. And it's not a developed path, but it is a path. But for most people, that means that they drive to Veterans Park, and it's really close. I mean, it's actually a very pleasant walk, but because there's no accessibility there, people drive, and living right next to Veterans Park, it's really irritating because there's so many cars.
Right.
There are so many cars there, like driving up, parking all the way down Dorset Street, right in back of our houses and stuff like that. And it's like, really? Wow. Where are all these people coming from?
Parking and capacity at at Veterans is definitely something we talked about last night at the park by park analysis for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and I think Donna's point is that some of these neighborhoods like Butler Farms are a
They're close.
10-minute walk,
Yeah.
but not really, because in the springtime and part of the year, you're up to your at least ankles in water to get there. And so it
Right.
winds up being a drive that is a 12-minute drive
Yeah,
all the
sure.
way around. And so it's creating a parking need that maybe could be at least partially alleviated
Right.
by not having to have the parking, by creating the better connectivity.
Just a better surface trail.
exactly. I mean,
Yeah, but
that
it
might tell
doesn't
you
solve-
not
No,
to
it
have
doesn't solve it.
another sport there that requires a whole lot of equipment. Because kids aren't gonna put our hockey bag on the back of their bike and pedal to the rink.
You must not have grown up in rural Quebec.
I didn't.
You've never been to Canada, eh?
something I'm doing on, like, I think like what Drew said, I think we'll take a crack at like the density trail connectivity map overlaying. And then maybe, yeah, I like the idea about like showing where interstates are. I think that's a great idea. And then I'm also noodling on like Strava data to like show where some of those like social trails have established between neighborhoods and like which ones can be more formalized. I don't know, maybe that's too hard, but we can talk about that.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, people on their mountain bikes try sometimes to use those trails, but they
Strava
don't
also
try
tracks
twice.
walkers and runners too.
They don't try twice.
So, sorry, just things I'm noodling on to help with that connectivity piece. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting, there actually is a right of way that the city owns that would connect the Stonehouse development. And it would go right through to not Oak Creek, what's the one on the,
Butler Farm.
no, the other one on the other side.
Riding Road?
Oh, the new one.
No, not the new one, the old one. What's it called? It's on Heinsberg Road, but it's on the east side.
It's on the official map.
It begins with H Street, I can.
Whatever,
Yeah,
but there's a
here's-
right of way, because there was a water pipe that was laid.
You're talking about the Hill Farm, maybe?
No, on the other side,
Oh,
east
Highland
side.
Terrace?
Island, yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah, that and beyond, and there is a right of way, and it's, sometimes you can walk it and bike it, but it's never been a real path. But all the people that have moved into that Stonehouse development have to get in their car or walk along Heinsberg Road to get to some other bike path. But it's there.
There's also,
And the city has the right of way because they put a water line through there. Well, we've never done anything about paving it or. So that's another opportunity to make it affordable.
well, there's also a right of way through,
Lou.
sorry, who's
I don't-
on?
I was gonna have them keep going because they didn't specifically want us to list
I know,
out
I
all the
agree.
different
Yeah, over
things,
time.
but
I'm
I know,
sorry.
yeah, no,
But
no,
there's
no.
one from,
Oh, it's okay.
there's a right of way that runs from the end of Swift Street through the Hill property all the way up to Heinsberg Road.
There's a planned right.
There's
of way.
an official map,
Right.
right?
Right.
It's not an owned.
It's there, it's on the map.
So I changed your slide.
I wondered, just to check in on time, I know we're a little bit after 8. Are we good? I just didn't know like how much time you have in your meeting.
Well, how much more do you have? How many more slides?
We
I
have.
think we have 7 more.
Okay, well, let's,
Some
I
are
think you should
definitional,
keep
so.
going.
Yeah, maybe try to wrap up in the next 10 or so minutes.
I think we can do that.
That's great.
Well,
Also big plan
for-
presenting tonight, so.
Good, you guys are.
Yeah, so just some other definitions that we thought could be implemented into both of these plans are like what is city owned and what's not city owned, and like just trying to keep track of that. And sorry, the bolded ones are like ones that would be more relevant to the open space plan, and the non-bolded ones are ones that would be more relevant to the comp plan, just to orient you there. So this is like our city owned slide. And again, we like ran this past the advisory committee and staff, and then this is our like non-city owned slide. And this is where there was like a lot of conversations about how to classify stuff. And this is kind of what we landed on. So like the way that, and we'll get a little bit more nuanced with language in the final plans, but like Winooski Valley Parks District like doesn't own a lot of the land, but they like manage a lot of the land, and same with like UVM and Vermont Land Trust, so they're like privately owned, but that's who manages them, and some have private access and some have public access, so that's kind of like how we're gonna define and lay stuff out in the plans, just because there's a lot of it.
Yeah, there is a lot.
And then, okay, so the map on the right is the map that Arrowwood Environmental and like the inner zoning health.
Open Space Committee.
Thank you. Eyes off. That's the map that they kind of work together to put together to identify like crucial wildlife connectivity habitat areas that felt important to the city to conserve for the purpose of wildlife habitat and space conservation. And then the map on the left is the land development regulation map, LDR. Am I saying the right words for that acronym?
These are the overlays.
The overlays. So that we've Kelsey had mentioned that the IZOP study was like primarily a volunteer-led effort, and it was largely in line with like the environmental study that Arrowwood had conducted. But at the end of the day, like the LDR map is like the end all be all, because that's like what the city has stated policy to already conserve. And so we're doing like a big comparison of like what parcels are here and what parcels are here and how do they overlap. And thankfully there is a lot of overlap, but like I'm thinking that like a lot of our recommendations for helping the city make decisions on which parcels they may want to conserve that would be stated in the open space master plan, like we'll use both of these maps, but I just like, I felt this feels relevant to y'all since I know you're doing a big LDR effort right now.
So it is very hard to see. I can see it on
I'm
my,
sorry, yeah.
no, on my screen, I can see it, but just the way it's been projected. There are very light green shapes throughout. So yes, there's the scenic overlays and like the airport approach cones and things like that, but these very light teal greenish colored things
Oh, they correspond to the other map.
That's the.
Yes, exactly.
are the habitat blocks.
Yeah, and just one little, I acknowledged at the beginning, there's 57 plans, so there's a lot for you to have digested. The map on the right is actually the habitat blocks map commissioned by the planning commission here for a regulatory purpose.
Okay, thank
It
you.
was at the same time as the interim zoning, but it is not their, they had a series of recommended properties. This one is identified mapped habitat blocks by average life.
There's the IZOP is the parcel map, so it's squarer
We
shapes.
did some comparison of those two, and there are a lot of similarities.
Yeah,
Right,
there's
and that's intentional,
lot
that
of
they had come up with their
overlaps.
potentially important properties. And then the planning commission, because they were looking at regulatory tools, hired a professional firm, Arrowwood, to identify where are their habitat blocks. It is not a surprise that there's some level of overlap, but this is more precisely mapped by experts on the subject of habitat versus more broadly a volunteer effort on a parcel by parcel basis of potentially important properties. So it's slightly different
Sorry.
tools. No, don't apologize, just sharing the technical difference, because those two maps have a lot of similarity.
And part of what we looked at in both of those efforts were the criteria that parcels were being evaluated by. And so we tried to combine some of those. We've been reviewing that with the Open Space Committee and incorporating a few more, like the IZOP process really focused on large parcels. That was almost its intent, was parcels over a certain size, and it really preferenced that. The Open Space Committee does see that as a huge value, particularly as you're trying to conserve, you want to conserve larger blocks of undeveloped land. But if you're also looking at some priorities around open space access equity, you might want to conserve smaller pieces of open space closer to city center. And so there may be a few cross-cutting criteria, if you will, that kind of add to the IZOP criteria. But we've worked with open space to review criteria for evaluating conservation value.
I guess like a question I had for y'all was like, it sounds like the Arrowwood map informed the habitat block overlay for the land development regulation map. And like, that feels like the most important one for us to consider for the creation of this plan.
Its purpose was to look at habitat blocks for regulation in the city. It is not necessarily more or less important than other resources. It was one that the planning commission felt was important to regulate on private land, because this plan is not necessarily about who owns it, or it may be about who owns it, but this was a regulatory tool, I think. I mean, feel free to jump in.
It's on the same level as, how the city regulates wetlands or floodplains or something else. It's another environmental resource along the same, sphere.
But certainly, I think, I guess just to give a little bit of background and context on that, when the planning commission was looking at what the city has regulated historically and what it hadn't, and had been looking at wildlife connectivity as a really important goal, the city has for a long time had pretty good regulations around floodplains, around wetlands, around streams and stream corridors. And those areas tend to serve the skeletal system of habitats of wildlife to be able to travel by near water. Where are the companion spaces that are not water-based, that are really the contiguous blocks of habitat? That's what the commission was trying to pair with this effort, knowing that they had regulated the other part.
Thank you, that's a really helpful clarification, so.
And just a note there is, our hope is that with some of the engagement around open space, and with the open space committee, trying to understand, there's both kind of the regulation piece of regulating private land, but also trying to identify what are the priorities that you might acquire, either development rights, conservation, or acquire the parcel. And so there are kind of two ends. You can protect it, or you can also acquire it. I think it could kind of filter in, and this plan obviously won't allocate you to acquire any specific parcel, but kind of say, here's the criteria by which you might evaluate that opportunity to acquire.
Sweet. So wrapping up here, but our next step for this project is to start drafting.
Oh, you get my binoculars here.
Sorry. Yes.
We ain't that young.
This is just an example. So the next step is to start drafting recommendations, and often like a tool that we use is to create this implementation matrix. And the idea is to like help like put a structure to like, because I mean, this is a pretty big project. So we're gonna have like a lot of recommendations, and the hope is to have like, okay, here's a task class recommendation, here's a definition or like more details about that task. And then we'll have like, I mean, this won't be like the exact structure that we follow for this project, but we often have like phasing or like a timeline associated with each task, and then like an estimated cost, followed by like potential funding sources for that task. And then like, I mean, this is only like a third of an implementation matrix. We'll have like potential partners, like other design considerations, like permitting. So I just wanted to like show you guys like kind of what we're headed toward, and if the structure feels good to you, because that's kind of, this will be like one part of the plan that will, or both of the plans, yeah.
The one you're looking at is for Grafton, Vermont, a town of 650 people, and totally different recommendations. It's not for, it's an example implementation plan, not the one for South.
We don't have any class 4 roads.
No, it's for Grafton.
It's sorry, this is just an example to show you like the structure of what we're kind of looking for. And so like the, oh, sorry, go for it.
Go ahead.
I just had one more question in terms of sort of outcomes of this work here. The mapping that you showed some areas that are served or not especially served. To what extent will there be recommendations in areas that you identify as being underserved? Like where the city needs to either have, well, I guess that's gonna be more on the park side, but because you can't create new open space easily, but like to what extent will that be, is that a part of the products here, and how does that shape up? Because I think that really becomes, you know, really core to your work as the commission.
Yeah, we don't expect that we'd recommend specific parcels, but that we would recommend areas of the town that are underserved, seek to create a new, and we try to give you as much information about the type of park you think, right? If it's a neighborhood park or a community park in this region, in this part of town, spatially. I think we probably want to use, I forget, are they quadrants? There's one of the ways that the town has divided the city before, and we're gonna use those same
Planning areas.
planning
Yeah.
areas. Thank you. Yeah.
That's what I was just gonna say. I think that like I haven't like finalized any of these thoughts. They're all just kind of floating around in my brain. But like when I think about like the final structure of this plan, like I was thinking about like utilizing that quadrant structure. So it'll be like, okay, we have the southeast quadrant, like we have X amount of parks. We feel like it needs X amount more parks, and here are the types that it would need, is kind of what I'm thinking. And
Because each park will have specific recommendations. We want to do that kind of master plan concept, you know, build a new ball field in X park, you know, improve the boardwalk in XYZ park, so on. But then I think either by planning area, we'd want to give you an assessment of, you know, trail connectivity improvements, new park needs, kind of at that kind of sub-planning area scale. And there's citywide recommendations that apply across the city, more towards things like the Open Space Fund or events and Parks and Rec is offering, things like that.
You may need to go a little bit more fine-grained in some of the recommendations than planning area. Just thinking, for example, in the northeast, the Country Club Estates neighborhood is the entire other side of the airport. So the fact that it's in the same quadrant as Chamberlain neighborhood, it's a 2-hour walk to get there. So figuring out like what are the major barriers that might require a sub-level work, you know, similarly, Shelburne Road and the railway are fairly substantial barriers, and being aware of those, of either trying to stitch those barriers so that there is better access or sort of acknowledging a playground probably needs to be on either side. of
So,
it.
forgive me for not remembering, but in the 2024 city plan, I think that those neighborhoods, those individual neighborhoods are identified in the plan, so maybe that's the level of structure we go to, like, for example, like Airport neighborhood, Chamberlain neighborhood.
It's tricky. We're happy to chat with you. This group did an exercise a few years ago to try to identify all the neighborhoods in the city, and I think we came up with 60.
Oh, my Lanta.
Yeah. 60 self-identified neighborhoods, so it's tricky, right? Because that's too much detail.
I think that will be a good time. We want to come back to this group with some draft recommendations and thoughts, and I think we'll try to get at that, and that will be a great time to dial it in and help make sure that we kind of reached the right granularity, particularly on, and we'll be really thoughtful that it's not just the planning areas, but trying to get to kind of sub areas that make sense from a walking standpoint.
Yeah, and reflecting on the population density as well, like, you know, having a small park within a quarter mile of 2,000 people is not gonna be sufficient, even though there is a park, it's not enough park, or, you know, because of the density of people in certain areas, or the planned density on the Shelburne Road corridor or in city center or something like that. So it's not just blank spaces on the map, it's sort of the level of intensity of parks matching the intensity of humans.
So we've heard even now that the school is providing a lot of access right here, and,
Mhm.
you know, for city center, but that as city center builds out, it's gonna quickly outstrip that access, and it's not
So
all
I
the
think
time.
we might have jumped the gun into your next steps here.
Yes.
If there was any.
Thanks for keeping us on task, Jessica. So yeah, next steps for us are wrapping up our needs assessment, like existing conditions, and then we're gonna begin drafting those plan recommendations. And then we're gonna start looking to schedule the next open house. We've been calling like draft recommendations like bubble diagrams, so it's like making like mini master plans for each park and open space. So that's really what we're gonna be diving into for the next month.
At the park by park scale and some citywide and planning area, right? So there are,
Yeah,
the bubble diagrams plus.
so
Yeah.
maybe we connect offline to talk about that, like degree of granularity brain.
Pixel size.
Yes.
Well, we love pixel size, but we understand that that's not always makes sense.
Cool.
Wonderful. Well,
Before you
please,
go.
yeah, go ahead, Michael.
I had one or two questions that I just jotted down. At the beginning, there was mention of human and habitat connectivity. What does that mean?
Kind of like the trail rec path connectivity. So like how can we facilitate additional like bike ped connections between parks and open spaces in population dense areas and neighborhoods. And then the wildlife connectivity is like taking into account that habitat, those habitat blocks and
Are you talking about, it's just human and habitat connectivity? What's the
No.
connection between humans and our habitat blocks?
Now, we're thinking of human connectivity and habitat
That's
connectivity
different separately,
as
separate.
And,
separate concepts,
okay,
but that there are opportunities to bring them together. So for example, we're working on a project in Essex with Arrowwood
okay,
that's
Okay.
looking at culverts that will bring people and wildlife underneath 289. And so that will improve, it's a project that's trying to improve both wildlife and human connectivity at the same time. It does turn out that it's probably gonna be two separate culverts, but it's going to be trans-scoping and we'll see what happens. But the overall project is trying to get both people and humans under 289 and find the right way.
second of our three questions, what role did our climate action plan play in your recommendations or?
yeah, I reviewed that plan as part of our big plan audit and like my biggest takeaway was that there were a lot of recommendations that came out of that plan that felt really aligned with the work that we're doing for the space plan. So I've been working with, we've been working with Bettina about that kind of stuff. So just making sure that any recommendations from the open space and parks master plan are gonna be in line with like what came out of the climate action plan.
Lastly, who served on the advisory group?
Okay, let's see if I can remember everybody. So we have Alistair Hayes from the Rec and Parks Committee, and then we have Catherine Boy
Mhm.
from the Natural Resources Committee, and then we have a nice lady from Public Art. Sorry.
You don't know this? That's Michael's partner.
Oh, funny. Okay, great.
Penny Tompkins.
I'm sorry.
It's actually my wife.
And she's a nice lady.
And
It's a good
nice.
description.
And we have some other folks, and I actually can't remember.
Vince Bolduc is representing the Housing Committee.
And we have Lori from City Council.
Yep.
and another woman who,
I'm
no,
I'm
these
blanking
were
on her
all-
name, but she works a lot with the schools for sort of access to recreational opportunities.
That's all, it's all city committees, no outsiders.
City staff,
There's two people who are not on a city committee, and I am just blanking on their names, and I feel
What are
bad.
their roles though?
They're on the community advisory. group.
No,
As-
but like, what is,
One is the person who works through the
Right.
schools, and I don't remember what the other.
oh, I can't either, I'm sorry, I have to
You should,
look back through my
Penny.
notes.
Ask Penny.
Or Silken knows all of them.
Silken.
You should.
Don't know.
Yeah.
sorry, yeah, we should know. Silken
No,
definitely.
no.
Silken knows. I can ask Silken.
Any other wrap-up questions or comments from anyone?
Will we have access to this when Kelsey has it?
Please.
To the,
And I'll send you all those maps.
Okay.
And also, thank you guys, it's really helpful for us to hear all the feedback that you gave us tonight, so thanks for letting us take up some of your time, or a lot of your time.
This has been wonderful.
Right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
thanks everybody. Or-
Yeah,
Long
and it's nice to meet all of you.
Standing up.
I think.
Good to see you again. Thank you.
We'll
Thanks.
send you
2 or 3
emails
minutes,
tomorrow.
while I get set up.
Be in touch.
But
Yeah,
Lana,
exactly.
so a lot, we're gonna be
Can't
hearing
go a day
from
without
Lana,
talking to you guys.
number 7. Do a 2 or 3 minute break.
Thanks, and
You know,
Okay,
this feels like.
we're gonna ramp back up.
Lana,
Thank you so much for coming back.
You're welcome.
Very, very sorry that you stayed the whole last meeting and we should have recognized earlier that we were not gonna get to your item, so. And
not a problem.
And Michael also specifically said that we should apologize publicly, so.
This is a super important topic, so I'm very happy that you invited me back and are dedicating this much time to it. I'm gonna take full advantage. I have a good portion of the strategy recommendations for the draft economic development strategic plan for the city of South Burlington. It's the first ever economic development strategic plan or economic development full-blown strategy that the city has ever requested. And it's a big shift in how we think about certain things in South Burlington. So I'm gonna share the whole thing with you at a strategy recommendation level, not at the like detailed implementation level. But it's a lot. So I appreciate your attention and let me know if I start to trail off or am not clear and start, sometimes I do mix up my words. And so if you don't understand something, just stop me and let me know. And I'm gonna try to stay away from jargon. There probably will be some. But in general, this is in plain English. So this plan, was developed with a lot of community engagement. I'm going to talk about that more specifically, but the consultants that the city hired were very clear about they're not big fish or game hunters. It's not about the one project or attracting, these 5 companies and then your economy is going to be great. They're really about, what makes the whole community tick and what do you have as a community going for you that you can really leverage to move forward into the future in a positive economic, with a positive economic, strong, sustainable, and compatible growth for your community. So should happen with a community and not to a community. So this overall strategy, there are, just to let you know, there's 11 discovery insights and there's 5 goals. And under those goals, there's overall 27 strategies. So we're gonna try to get through them all today. One of the
We're
things,
gonna hold our questions.
you're up to you.
Go
Okay,
for it.
all right. So one of the big findings is that South Burlington is starting from a place of strength. It was kind of fun to watch them discover this, because they're like, oh, that's really great. Like, so there are many amazing things about South Burlington that they were super impressed by. One of my favorite things was taking them by Beta and having them be like, so what is the city doing for Beta? Like, what are your tax incentives for them like? And we're like, oh, no. Like, we don't do that in Vermont. We can't compete with other states. So, but despite that, we are a community on the rise. We're certainly, we have a much higher growth rate than other communities, which is very important to our ability to provide services and sustain a high quality of life. And this plan really looks at that in the direction that we're going. We have a very talented population, very highly educated. We have a fairly high income. We have 20% of the county jobs. And we have some really interesting companies that I'm going to talk about later. City Center is happening. It's no longer just an idea. It's actually very visible, and people in the region know about it. And then we are very strong in terms of climate, and we have a lot of actions, strategies, and projects that clearly illustrate that commitment to climate action. And that makes our community very attractive for companies and individuals and families. So as well as, a place that residents can be really proud of. And then the lifestyle. So when you talk to a company like Beta, there are a lot of reasons that they're here, but for many people, it is Vermont, the Adirondacks, the White Mountains, all of this that is here, and the natural beauty of the city, but also the surrounding areas that really pulls people to this place and keeps them here. And the active lifestyle. So we have a lot to build on, which is really exciting. And the other thing, there's like 3 things that I wanted to tell you about the plan. So this is the third one, is that the Economic Development Strategic Plan is really a plan that is inside the City Plan 2024. So it builds off the 4 principles. And it especially implements the 4th one, which is collaborative and engaged. And I love that the second sentence is support the city's role as an economic engine for Vermont by encouraging community businesses and local job creation. I think one of the things that came up over and over again is that Vermont sometimes has a hard time with the term economic development. And there's a lot of discussion about Chittenden and Vermont and the other Vermont, and really leaning into our role, which is, we may not talk about it a lot, but we do have a very strong presence in the state economy, and recognizing that and really leveraging that and celebrating that, rather than being like, oh yeah, South Burlington, but recognizing and building on that as a strength. And one of the things that I think you guys probably are in the best position to understand is that this plan talks a lot about growth, but it's growth that is already planned for and incorporated into City Plan 2024, the housing targets that have been discussed, the way that land is zoned for industry and commercial development, as well as for housing. So it's not saying the economic development plan is not a departure from the City Plan 2024. It's a refinement and focus of the existing recommendations, zoning, and land development regulations. Doesn't say that there might not be tweaks, as I said, refinements, but it's not saying you're on this path, but really you need to be over here on this path. It's saying you're on this path, but maybe the path could be improved. So this plan had a lot of input from many different sectors, and I think all of you here went to at least one of the meetings related to this plan. And I'm hopefully there's something in here that you haven't already heard. But there began with benchmarking, looking at other communities that are similar in size or economic profile or demographic profile or location to a Queen City, or adjacent to a hub city. And there are a lot of great findings coming out of that I spoke with different committees, city leadership, city staff, conducted a data-driven analysis of different industries in South Burlington and in the region, and then met with clusters of those industries to say, you know, are you guys actually a cluster? Are you guys, do you work together? Can you benefit from working together? And, you know, why are you here? Are you growing? Is it true? You know, and making sure that that data was real data. So they went from 5 when they did that assessment down to 3, which are then embedded into the plan. They looked at other organizations to see how they are doing economic development, to develop recommendations for us in building an economic development, building the ability to carry out the plan and sustain a focus on economic development along with the many other priorities of the city. They interviewed local business owners, civic leaders, you know, different folks throughout the city. And then they also engaged in many meetings. So from the beginning of the plan to the beginning of their findings and then to the strategies. So they came twice, but they also did online meetings. And when they came, they had different meetings throughout the day with different groups. So hopefully you know what our population is. You also are probably pretty familiar with our growth rate. I'm not sure if you know, but 75% of our residents over 25 have a BA or higher, which means that we are above average in terms of education. The fourth one right there in the corner, the fact that our prime talent pool, our working age population is 5% larger than the US and 13% bigger than Vermont means we are very young. And you'll see later, that means that more than a quarter of our population is between 25 and 44, which is a huge, huge deal and very important for people who are looking to expand or locate a business. Our median income household is fairly high. We have a higher labor participation rate than other communities. And that actually is across the nation, not just in Vermont. And then our commute, I think hopefully we all know that our commute on average tends to be shorter than in many other
18
locations.
is exact.
Yeah. And so like I said, we're coming from a place of strength. So just because we're coming at a place of strength doesn't mean we should do nothing. So there is a lot that is on the table that we may be leaving aside. And there are also external factors that are creating real issues in South Burlington and in the state. And so making sure that we are addressing them and continue to be in a place of strength is very important. And so I think this talks about many, you know, these strengths that we just went through, the success of city center, and about the strategy overall is, and we'll go through it. So I'm not gonna
The last sentence says it all.
Yes. So one of the things that they noted was that because we have so many new people moving into South Burlington, it's important to engage people and make them feel part of the community, but also give them opportunities to be part of the civic life of the city. And so making sure that we have ways and means to bring people who are moving into many different types of housing and are living in many different situations and have and are brought into our community. Another issue is housing. I think we all know this, but we need housing. It's you know, it's a critical issue. And even though housing is expensive across the country, it doesn't mean that it's not a problem. So and so one of the issues that was identified is the housing that's being built, what is needed in our community, and just making sure that we're able to maintain talent in South Burlington and in our region to feed to meet the need of people who would like to move here to support businesses and other parts of the economy.
Did you have an answer to that question?
I'm sorry?
The question is the housing we're building the right?
Yes.
You have an answer.
No.
Oh.
No, but
Sorry.
I'm hoping you guys will, so. And and it's not just making the mismatch, but ensuring that we are not getting in the way of that housing. Like if we decide that the housing is something that we need, are we doing what we can to make that process a smooth and logical process?
Can I just connect the dots on a thing here?
Yes.
I think that's a great question that you're flagging, Michael, and I think that the consultants here have done a really great job of sort of staying in the core of what they were brought to do, which is an economic development strategic plan. And where they've identified a either feedback from the community or a key component of economic development that falls outside of their area of expertise, they've sort of put a stake in the ground and said, as we think about our future as a community, we need to be making sure that our housing being built aligns to the jobs and the employment that we're striving to have. So it's not answering the question of what that housing is, but it is saying that success will mean aligning those subjects. And that is, your work in the future, a housing needs assessment in the future, or a housing strategy in the future. Sort of that's where this plan stops outside of its own area of expertise.
The other, another big area is talent. I think everyone knows that it can be really hard to find people to fill jobs these days. But it's more than that. They also looked at wage discrepancies. So for example, men earn 20,000 more per year than women. Black residents are experiencing poverty at rates more than 3 times the county average. So it's more than just attracting people here to fill the jobs, but making sure that people that are here are able to access or see pathways to move through the employment pipeline. So it may be like you start at this job and then you move to this job and you move to another job. You may need these certificates along the way, or you may need this education, but ensuring that as people who are either in or outside of educational opportunities are linked into jobs, growth opportunities, and sort of this pipeline and working their way up through different industries, especially focus industries. So right now, our system is very scattered, and there's a lot of specialization, but it isn't necessarily linked all the way through someone's career. So that was one of the opportunities that they noted, but it's based on some real data points that they identified in some of our industries. So climate, I mentioned earlier, our economy is very much focused on electrical concerns. So there's a lot of work on Beta is very focused on electrical aircraft, was much more sustainable than regular aircraft and regular ways of transporting things. Dynapower is, super focused on batteries. So we have a lot of very innovative firms in our area that are working in the area of climate. And then we have other firms like Life Science, which have a very light, much lighter footprint, but that also are working generally in the area of healthcare and improving lives. So our industries are very much aligned with our values. And then we also have a lot of retail, very focused on public, meaning, I don't know if you, sorry, I'm like rambling here at the moment, but there's a great core of businesses that are centered around climate and energy in our area. So there's a lot going on. And the other part of this is that climate action and things around making our lifestyle less energy intensive, like walking and biking and transit use, are very much aligned with attracting more educated, more tech or health industry savvy employees to an area and keeping them here. So those are the types of communities that they're looking for. So the three clusters, the first one is life science, and it has a very high wage level. It's one of the smallest clusters, so it's very it's actually just below what we would consider a concentration. However, it is also one of the fastest growing fastest growing industries in the United States. And it's very there's a lot of investment in life sciences in our region. So Boston, for example, has a very heavy life sciences investment and industry. So it makes a lot of sense for this to be located here. Aerospace is another one. People talk about the Quebec, Vermont, all the way to Connecticut aerospace corridor. BTANG and Data together are huge anchors for that, but there's also many other companies in the area. And then IBM, but I would also say electrical manufacturing. So OnLogic, Logic Supply, Resonant Link, Dynapower, they're all part of that electrical manufacturing ecosystem that exists today. And what they're pointing out when they talk about these industries is that there's a lot of opportunity for supply chains. There's a lot of opportunity for associated industries that may have look for a similar talent pool. For example, when you talk to Beta, they're, one of the reasons that they're probably here is because Dynapower is here and there's a lot of electrical engineers in the area. So there's a lot of talent existing. How do we build on that and ensure that people know that, these are the three industries or industry areas that we're about, and bring in allied industries, supplier industries that would benefit from this ecosystem. Once we know these, it's also easy to look and say, oh, how old is the workforce? Aerospace workforce is, a good portion of it is over 55. That means that they are looking to retire, and aerospace is looking for new talent to come in and replace that workforce. And when we look at these different industries, we can also say, what is the average entry age? What is their average education? And start to map out pathways for people to go into these industries. And some of them require a lot of education, but then life science, for example, you need a lot of lab techs, and that's generally, a fairly low skill but high remuneration wage group. So we can start to see how a focus on these industries can help households in our region access more. So okay, sorry. There's like three that are a little bit similar. So this one is about destination, I believe. Let me just make sure. Yes. So we have an amazing hotel industry. If you look at Williston Road, it's got the most rooms in Vermont in any community. However, if you ask them, why are people staying here in South Burlington? It's like, well, we're the closest to the interstate. So how do we make it more of a place that people are actually going to? And there are some reasons that people do come here for shopping, but making sure that we are a destination and knowing why we're a destination. We are also obviously full on in city center. But the recommendation from the plan is that we build additional excitement into city center through focusing on entrepreneurship. So and making sure that the retail and restaurant type business supports that. So creating more spaces for entrepreneurship. I was a little skeptical of this, I'll admit it. But when we talked to our partners, they said, yes, there is a need for additional space for startups and especially people who are looking for co-working spaces or incubators. And there's a lack of that type of space in Vermont. So, and especially in the Chittenden County area, which, you know, we hear about very successful places, but they're not meeting all of the needs in our region.
Something like Hulu.
Yes, but less fancy.
Less expensive.
Yeah.
I didn't say that, but yes. And then, you know, my favorite quote about this, you know, this is about identity, which we're working towards, is that this was a resident said this, who is also a business owner. They said sometimes they feel like South Burlington is walking around with a bucket on its head. And so it's just really hard to see the light because there's this bucket and it's just cutting off all the great things about South Burlington that is, that would otherwise be seen if there wasn't this bucket. So just being able to communicate who we are, but also to continue to build that identity. And then, of course, building that capacity to deliver on the plan. So strategic framework. I have 4 minutes.
Oh, yeah, we don't adhere to that. So just keep going.
Okay, all right, I'm gonna try to do, okay. So so we're gonna do the vision, the goals and the strategies, the actions we're not gonna talk about. So this is the vision. A landscape for us, creatives, founders, builders, and doers, South Burlington, bold by nature, powered by innovation. Interestingly, Vermont's is innovative by nature. So was surprisingly similar. So where next generation industries scale, talent thrives, city center comes to life, and climate and community values lead the way, powering Vermont's next economy. So we are part of the economic engine for Vermont, and we, through this plan, are creating a structure by which South Burlington can be a leader in moving the economy forward, which is kind of fun.
Well, I would say kind of fun, but also critically important for like the whole future of our state.
Yes. So goal 1 is about innovation, growing South Burlington into a hub for leading edge, clean and high value innovation. Goal 2, a place where talent belongs, all about attracting and keeping people here. We will make South Burlington the place where diverse talent and entrepreneurs stay and succeed. Goal 3, a destination that draws you in. This is all about our identity. We will transform South Burlington into a vibrant destination that appeals to visitors, residents and visitors alike. I'm a terrible reader. Ready for what's next. So this is a lot of where you guys come in. We will prepare South Burlington to welcome quality growth and investment with aligned processes, ready sites, and the tools to support them. And goal 5, built to deliver, is we will build an economic development team to deliver on South Burlington's potential. And so that's more internal.
Keep going.
Yeah, okay. So there are measurements. I don't know if this should I just focus on the goals and yeah, okay. So these are all online. And I'm actually putting up a new version tomorrow that has all the implementation steps. It's about 80 pages, but you can skip through whatever you like to. So I think I've explained why this matters. a goal one, so this is the innovation goal. So here are three sectors. And we have talked about all of the reasons why they are so critical. I think, one of the eye-opening things for us was, IBM is not in South Burlington, but it's still
It's not
important.
IBM anymore.
I'm sorry.
Global Foundries.
Global Foundries Fab 9 is not in South Burlington, but it is still critical to South Burlington. Just because it's not in South Burlington doesn't mean that we shouldn't pay attention to it, or that we shouldn't pay attention to associated industries related to Global Foundries.
One of
And
your slides has IBM needs to be corrected.
it does, okay,
Early in your presentation.
I will change it. Or I'll talk to them about changing it. So the 5 strategies are launching sector partnerships, so making sure that within the industry, folks are talking to each other. And that's a very broad definition. So for the airport, it may be all the transportation systems that get customers to the airport. May also be, and they would be within the aeronautics cluster. So a very broad definition, but also one that enables things to happen. So not just talking, but also focused on talent and pathways and solving problems, or solving identified issues and opportunities, or recognizing opportunities. I hope you've heard about the Tech Hub, which is gallium nitride. It's experimental chip technology. So we're continuing to work with UVM, and we don't work with Global Foundries yet, but UVM works with Global Foundries to make sure that we are still part of this really exciting collaboration. They just received several $1 million to add on to their supercomputing center, which is in South Burlington, specifically for the Tech Hub. Create an innovation district near the airport to support electric aviation, clean tech manufacturing, and applied research and development. This is work that I understand that you are currently have on your work plan in the future. It doesn't look like this, probably in the way you have seen it presented, but that is an opportunity what this plan does is it presents that opportunity to the city to think about how those efforts move forward. Support early stage companies through a city center innovation hub. I think we mentioned that. And then tell our story in a way that's compelling and understandable. So goal 2 is retaining and attracting talent. And also smaller businesses and entrepreneurial businesses. A big part of this, and this is where partnerships come into play again, is aligning workforce and economic development efforts to ensure local training, education, and reskilling pathways reflect the city's evolving industry base. So that really comes back to both the partnerships, but also the many different entities that are working on workforce development in Vermont and education. Expanding housing and childcare access. That's clearly, I think we've all been working on that to some extent, but to continue that work. Launch a Young Professionals Initiative to connect emerging leaders through networking, service, and career building opportunities rooted in place. And this is really responding to the new residents that we have coming to our community, either to raise families or to accept a great new job, or for whatever reason they're coming, but just bringing them in to a community and then showing them ways that they can continue to evolve and grow within this community. And then support small businesses. And that's really, we don't have a small business program in South Burlington. There are a lot of small business resources in Vermont, but they, there's not a clear map and pathway and owner of that information in Vermont at the moment. So making that more clear and transparent for people who are starting small businesses or trying to grow their small business. And then a destination that draws you in. So some of these should look a little familiar. But activating city center into both you know, a civic hub, which this building does to some extent, but an entrepreneurial hub, and working with outside organizations or internally with our rec department to activate spaces here and around city center, supporting the transformation of the University Mall into a mixed-use district, launching a hospitality and placemaking initiative, and then you know, building on what we have, but transforming us into more of a destination. So a lot of our activities are very community focused, and we'll keep doing that. It's not saying to move away from that, but to continue to build those events until they became maybe they're regional. And then at a certain point, there's maybe 1 or 2 events that actually becomes, you know, more than a regional draw. So and then invest in active transportation infrastructure. So to continue on our path to be walkable, bikeable, and transit friendly. Ready for what's next? So and this is, I'm hoping you guys will see yourselves in some of these recommendations as we go along. So the first one really focuses on city center and, you know, not Market Street so much as Williston Road and Dorset Street and the investments that we have made in city center. But how does this area welcome people into the area? And then how do we continue the infill that we have and start to push it out away from Market Street and continue to see redevelopment in the TIF district and along Williston Road. And then looking at permitting processes, and I know you've started that with the form-based code and thinking about pain points, but is our permitting helping us to achieve the vision that the community has in the most efficient way and the most painless way possible? And so really thinking about those processes, you know, and making sure that the initiatives that you have underway continue and get completed. So for example, online permitting will go a long way towards helping with that, but also looking for other opportunities. Inventories of available sites. You may or may not know this, but there's no MLS for commercial properties. So it's all word of mouth. And so creating that inventory and making it available. Ensuring that investment is aligned with our climate smart and innovation aligned identity. So making sure that those processes really, I don't know if I want to say privilege, but in some, I know at least some of the conversations were that some communities do have a white glove service for development that comes in that is aligned with the city's vision. So, and what would that look like? And then establish a downtown on Shelburne Road that complements the city center with a focus area in the southwestern part of the city. And so that, and then there's if you go online, I'll send the link to Kelsey. So there are a lot of case studies. I left a few of them. So Montgomery County is a community that set up an innovation district for biotech. So it's really focused around supporting biotech R&D in an innovation center as close to transit and serving that area. I think we can find other ones. It's not that this one is the best or the most important one, it's the one that's in the plan. But it doesn't, I wouldn't say that's the only information out there. Beaverton, Ohio, Oregon, excuse me, actually know someone from Beaverton, Oregon, so that's kind of bad. So they really worked on their development review process. And then goal 5 is making sure that there's an economic development team to deliver on South Burlington's potential. So dedicated staffing. Coordination, especially for project delivery, to make sure that projects are delivered on time. And then ensuring that we have a voice in regional and state strategy. So that is it. This is, I don't know, I know you're all holding questions.
We were holding questions.
Yeah.
Anybody up here have any questions for Alana? Michael?
Is anybody tracking new arrivals?
People that move into the area?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we kind of rely on the census to tell us how many people we have in South Burlington. I've been in a lot of conversations about welcome packets.
I'm having this conversation with Holly, but she's not staffed to develop the database.
Yeah, so I don't know that we would track specific people, but I think we are talking about giving people information so that when they arrive, they know where to go for information and how to get connected and have fun. Yeah. Yeah.
There's all kinds of little things too. I mean,
Yeah.
things that people moving here from Chicago just don't have a clue about,
Yes.
you know?
And the Energy Committee was one, they were very successful in giving out welcome packets to through working with realtors.
Who?
Working with realtors. So it's certainly something, either building on that model or a new model. Other communities do welcome packets. So we have done a lot of work with the managers of the Catamount Run buildings so that they have there's actually flyers in their main lobby, which tells them about different city services. And we're also experimenting with sending out information in tax bills that only goes to property owners though, so figuring out how to.
Yeah, but there are a lot of businesses that could benefit from having that list of
Yes.
new arrivals.
Yes.
Last question is, it seems to me we won't achieve what you've set out here this evening without promoting what we have.
Yes.
Nationally, targeted advertising or promotion targeted for the kinds of businesses we want here. They're not gonna just come.
So-
Our benefits, our beauty and our benefits have to be
Yes, so I think
promoted.
we definitely, like, telling our story will be really important. And part of that will be online. Part of it will be through the state and other organizations that do outreach. Part of it will be there are existing efforts. I feel like everyone is an ambassador for Vermont and everything is an ambassador for Vermont to some extent. But our story is not in that story yet. And just making sure that we're in that story. To some extent, this plan is not about directly soliciting companies to come here, but it might be about being a better participant in things we care about. So if there's, it might be about working with hotels to attract an aeronautics convention here and then providing a lot of information about South Burlington, about the aeronautics convention that is here, or so. There are ways.
A Formula One race would do it.
So I'm looking for aligned aligned ways where we're sort of hitting multiple interest points together that's a good way to tell that story.
But there's gonna be a promotional strategy and a promotional budget. Ain't gonna come for free,
Right, so we.
and maybe the state can help.
Yes, but in a lot of ways, we are looking for companies that might already be working with our existing companies. So, but they might be looking to bring a supplier
In their
closer,
supply chain, you mean?
either within their supply chain, or maybe it's a closely allied company. Or maybe a company is like, wow, they're really successful there, how are they doing that?
But who's doing that?
Well, I think that's the key question, right?
Yeah.
Right, Michael? So what I'm really excited about the strategic plan is there's a million things that a community could theoretically do to build success. And here we have, these three major target sectors that are areas where there's a lot of innovation happening, a lot of growth happening, and a lot of the ability to stack related businesses, so supply chain work like that. So growth supports connected high-paying jobs essentially, and then that connects itself to restaurants that are then able to support themselves because there are these other component pieces. And there's a lot in here, and this is the beginnings of the how. And I think something that was really eye-opening to me is that this is an incredible opportunity for us to be not just local leaders in this, not even just regional leaders, but really statewide leaders on this subject. We are pushing, in a really positive way, we are pushing up, I guess, to those partners who are working in all sorts of fields, like tech, what's the word I'm looking to say, technical school
Okay, yeah.
type work, and the state economic development folks to really, this is our plan, but it's really potentially a lot more than just our plan. And the people and parties connected to that are a big role that we're gonna be having is seeing where we can strategically connect those dots. We're not gonna form our own every version of every component of this, but it gives a roadmap that we can be a leader in, and it's.
The whole innovation hub thing, I mean, it just, sort of got me thinking, it's like, okay, there's a lot of space that was sort of planned for retail, in a lot of these buildings. But, everybody knows that takes forever to fill up retail space. How, and then I was thinking that there's this position, this Market Street or City Center, sort of a development coordinator or something.
South Burlington City.
No, it's like,
Yeah,
it's an advertised
The
position.
director for the
Okay.
collaborative.
Yeah, so the executive director for the collaborative.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I didn't know if that collaborative, if that sort of thing can start generating interest in the innovation hub. Cause I think that would be a great way to kind of create excitement fairly quickly, cause
Yeah.
you see what happened at Hub, not Hub, with the Hula, at Hula. I mean, that was like dead space. Then all this, of course, it's a beautiful location too, you gotta admit that.
And a
But-
beautiful building.
It's beautiful and everything about it's beautiful. But it just like became so lively so quickly, and I think that kind of innovation hub in existing space, I mean, that people should be talking to the people that have that space to get that going, because the kind of space, it's retail type space,
Yeah.
Colin, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, so I one thing I think I really liked in that you're just talking about is like the whole idea of also trying to streamline permitting, because that's definitely something that, especially with kind of smaller business startups around trying to relocate, time is very much money, and it's something that is very important to businesses, to the best of my knowledge, and something that we can, as a city, is very much in our power to enact change in for relatively low costs. I was sort of curious what kind of thought has been given to, assuming we are kind of successful at really trying to streamline a lot of our permitting process. So like from like the time when you propose a business to like when you're on the ground and everything's set up within this in the city. If we are successful, it's something that a lot of these businesses aren't going through that often. How you kind of have we sort of thought about how we kind of advertise, like, hey, South Burlington, we're a really kind of efficient, streamlined setup place, because like to people that, because again, we're trying to target people who are currently here, and it's a little something that is not, if we are doing it well, it may not be immediately apparent that that is one of our competitive advantages. I'm sort of curious if there has been work on how we would publicize essentially these efforts.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I mean, there's a bunch of ways that would be publicized. I mean, there would definitely be a website that's just dedicated to economic development, but more splashy, like about South
Mhm.
Burlington, and that might be something that is highlighted. I think that would be something that would be taken out to the development community so that people knew and realtors knew who were locating people.
Mhm.
And you know, and I think if we had statistics of you can get through the process in this amount of time, that would be, you know, a big number. And then once people experience it, they will also talk about it.
Mhm.
But I think that is, those types of processes and statistics are very important to communicate.
Thank you.
You have to think about the fact that city center happened as fast as it did. You know, like once South Burlington set its mind to it, things can happen very quickly here. And I think that's a good place to start. You know, it's like, look how fast this happened. You know, we made it possible for this to happen with the TIF district. And, you know, we don't necessarily have TIF districts for everything, but, you know, look at what made that work.
Yeah.
You know more than anybody.
I do. I feel like I'm like, yes, and I started 12 years ago. But I think that
But
by
that's fast. I mean,
it is-
that's fast considering.
It is fast. I think the developers, by the end of the process, they had gone through it enough that they knew how to do it. And so they were able to do the last few very quickly. I think the earlier ones were longer because it is a complicated process. I'm not saying that it will ever become not complicated, but there may be ways to make it a smoother process going forward. And that may, and I think one of the suggestions was, even if there is someone who helps people through that process, when it's important enough that they get walked through the process so that they're not missing steps. They know who to go to next. They're not trying to figure it out. And then I think there are other strategies that you guys have been talking about too, so.
We just to mention the opposite also happens where the same, you know, couple of people in our office will get emails from 6 people who are all asking about the same project, because we get the lawyer, the realtor, the owner, the landscape architect, the sign designer person, like, so the coordination kind of hitting something really early in the process and saying, hey guys, you guys need to get your ducks in a row. Like everybody can talk to me. Like, here's the point on South Burlington side, but you guys also have to be focused on your side, can streamline things as well.
So I want to try to wrap up. I know we kept you late 2 meetings in a row now, and so maybe if there's a last question or two.
No, I was gonna make a comment about housing. The planning commission just changed the rules to allow 14-story buildings in T5, 12 and T4, something like that. And that's will produce density, tax efficient, affordability, I think affordable. And when you get that kind of density, it also makes public transit viable, because
Yeah.
right now we
Yeah.
don't have what it really takes to have a good public transit system. We just don't have the density. But
They'll-
those ideas that the planning commission came up with will sort of tie into that, because
Yeah.
multi-story buildings like that, at least in other parts of the world, are affordable, the ones that I've observed anyway.
There's a ton of things that we can be looking at in both the capital side, the sort of possibly the white glove work, and the regulatory side. And we're really at the beginning part of this. We've done some really neat things. For example, even within our current regulations, the DRB has worked with the airport, for example, to say that the airport in the adjacent area with the Chamberlain neighborhood is owns a substantial amount of land, and they have a plan to be building out a shared use path and sort of park area there, which is wonderful for the neighborhood. It's also specifically beneficial to the airport because they have a landscaping requirement through the LDRs. It was getting very difficult to find places to plant trees that the FAA is comfortable with on an airport. They were starting to get to a point of spending money in sort of almost silly ways. And instead, projects can now assign a portion of their money to building out this community feature. We could do the same kind of thing. Imagine if, you know, a place like Tech Park had a identified, you know, focal point, and everybody could, who's getting ready to build a building, does, you know, what they need to do at their building, and then they sort of participate in something bigger. Or we partner with them on stormwater issues or things like that to really make it so that not every single one who's doing it has to sort of learn everything and go on their own. And, you know, it doesn't mean we're reducing the quality of anything. If anything, we're increasing the quality, but we're making it simple, easier for them to achieve.
Just a comment, it seems to me another important group to reach out to are the actual people who would want to do the development. And I'm not sure if there's a list, there probably isn't, but it's, you know, those innovators need to get partnered with someone who actually can build out their dream or transform some of the buildings along road is down
San Remo.
San Remo.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a whole bunch of buildings there that probably aren't optimally used.
Yes.
Some of whom are empty probably. It's those kinds of
And
connections that
visiting other cities where these kind of districts occur, because I think sometimes these developers, they don't have good visions in their heads about what this can be. And, you know, I think there's a lot of architects who have these visions, but the developers are often thinking in much more basic terms.
Sure.
And, you know,
I was using that
every
kind of
time
word.
I think about pedestrianizing something, it's like, I don't know how a developer imagines that, but when you spend a little time in Europe, like, you know what pedestrian zones are, I'm not sure people in this country get it yet, like what it means to pedestrianize the street.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing.
Yeah, I know that they did spend a lot of time talking to entrepreneurs and innovators. There is definitely a lot of frustration around the development process. And it's interesting because when they're talking to them, they're not talking to the city. So you find out things like, well, when you develop in North Carolina, it's really different, and it's not the same experience. So I would say that one of the things that came out in the outreach, and not to say that there hasn't been a lot of work done that is going to be codified coming up, but that there is a high level of frustration still, so.
Thank you so much, Alana.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean,
It's really
it gives us
interesting.
a lot of good paths forward on many of those.
Great to have this.
You'll be here for another 12 years. This is a plan that supports your employment.
So I don't believe we have any other business.
Which is a good thing.
for minutes. I didn't see
I didn't
any,
see any.
so we are adjourned. Thank you all very much. Great meeting.
Thanks, everybody.
So our next meeting.
I'm not
here.
Donna.
Recording stopped.
And
Guess what? In
Neither of
three
us are here for the.
five